How can we work with management to move beyond written policies and create a truly ingrained culture of safety in the workplace?
How would the organization change people's mindsets when there is an increased employee turnover?
How can organizations support employee well-being without it feeling like a tick box exercise?
When we listen and we see why people are leaving, we've got to address it, we've got to take action. Sometimes that feedback and information is why people are leaving.
What does inclusive leadership look like in day-to-day actions? What can be done to change the culture of an organization for both the employee and the employer, and how can the HR balance performance with employee well-being to incorporate a positive culture as a measure of improved performance?
Oof, two great questions. Thank you.
I'm Vivian Boaz, and this is the EHS Unplugged podcast, the show where we share tips on home and workplace safety, environmental sustainability, and health and wellness tips. Join us as we explore these topics with industry experts and learn to create a safer and healthier world.
I work alongside Great Place to Work UK as the Chief People Advisor. For those who don't know what Great Place to Work are, they're the real global leader in employee engagement and giving businesses access to what their employees think and talk about. And I'm also the co-owner of a hospitality group called All the Best. Hospitality, one of the UK's biggest employers, 10% of the UK workforce are in hospitality, and it's also 10% of the country's GDP. What we try to do, myself and my business partner, is really change the culture of what hospitality is. In the UK, hospitality is the sort of last of the industries where people have sort of fell into it. And we've really tried to change that. And I'm just so, as I said, so excited and so thankful to be with you all today. Thank you for joining me on a Friday afternoon. And I hope this is a session that we can all look into the weekend and have some food for thought about what we can do as HR, health and safety, people leaders going forward. Today, we're going to be exploring about how we can treat people better. And now it's not just good HR, but it's the foundation of everything that we're looking to do. It's the foundation of growth, workplace safety, and human dignity. The 5 points that I'd love to speak to you about today is here. Get the basics right, build cultures that protect and perform, make voice the engine of progress, lead the human way, and culture being the multiplier. Okay. So this is what we'll be talking through. You can see some brief descriptions here, but before we get into this, as we said, it's about what we can do. And I believe that people and health and safety and the things that we're going to be talking about, it's a holistic approach. I don't just see health and safety as a tick box exercise. I don't just see HR and people as something that you need to have in an organization. We're the barometer of culture, and it's super crucial to me that health and safety and people go hand in hand. And there are some 5 points here that I want us to talk through, the big ideas that will be able to do that. So we'll start with getting the basics right. So trust performance and build on simple foundations and fundamentals. We need to look at fair pay, safe environments, predictable shifts, and dignity at work. When organizations take care of basics properly, people feel secure enough to thrive. And I think that's a big thing for all of us in the world at the moment. We've coming out of a pandemic, which, although now seems like quite a long time ago, we're all still feeling the effects from that. And it's about how we can go from surviving to thriving. And I think getting the basics right is a core part of that. Once we've done that, I want to talk through how we can build cultures that protect and perform, make voice the engine of the process. Growth starts when people feel safe to speak up. We need to understand what our companies want and our people are concerned about, what we're doing well, and so on. But it's about ideas, risks, or concerns. Using insights from Great Place to Work and everyday listening habits, leaders can turn voice into action, building trust and innovation. Okay. So they're the first three big ideas. The next one is about leading the human way. We're all human beings, and I think this is something that's global, not just in the UK, not just in Kenya, but everywhere. We're going into a world of where AI is knocking on our door. The workplace changes consistently, but the one thing that will always remain is the human aspect of how we treat people. So I always think that health and safety and well-being is a form of leadership, not just a compliance exercise. The sound behaviors, which we'll talk about, show leaders how to embed safety, care, and trust in the daily practices as well. Okay. So that's something that we'll go on to before we address the biggest point of the day and the thing that I really want to drive home for everyone. I always feel that culture is the multiplier. That's how we will see a direct results throughout our organizations or what we're trying to do. So the basics give you stability, leaderships give you the direction, but culture truly amplifies everything. Um, by teaching the tale, practicing what we preach, inspiring the insiders, and learning to listen, culture becomes the engine of sustainable growth. Okay. So these are the big five things that we're going to be talking about today. How we can growth, what is the multiplier, and culture is that. But we can't get to the culture point before we address those 4 points beforehand. Okay. So let's delve right into it. Getting the basics right. So if you think about anything that you do, be it starting a project, starting a new job, on a bigger scale, if you're in the construction industry or as I've been in the past, the co-working spaces and so on, you need to get the basics and the foundations right of everything you do. You can't build trust on shaky ground. The basics are what I feel give people the confidence that their workplace is safe and dependable. Okay. So that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to create safe, fair, dependable workplaces, and we have to do the basics right to make that right. But what are the basics? They're super simple. Fair pay, fair contracts, predictability, and safe environments. Before we do anything as people leaders or in the health and safety sector or absolutely anything, we need to make sure these things are there. As I mentioned earlier on, my background, there's a lot in hospitality, there's a lot in tourism, there's a lot in retail and so on. And I think what really makes Kenya and the UK very similar is the hospitality and tourism trade and industry, okay? Both are around about 10% of the nation's GDPs, and both roughly employ 1 in 10 people in their own countries. And as I said, there's a huge paradox here. So, despite the scale and importance of these industries, they're still sort of the last to get things right and the last to really box off these things. So, like fair pay, make sure people are paid on time, service charges being split, creating safe workplaces. Profit is crucial to a lot of these industries, so things get forgotten. Shifts can be here, there, and everywhere, and real investment in people and safe environments are lacking. I think when I look at what we have done at all the best, we started with those basics when we started out when we first started. It was very much a conversation about, okay, what can we do that differentiates ourselves from any business in hospitality in the UK or a lot of businesses across in London specifically? And it was about how we treat people, giving them input, making sure they get fair pay every single week. They know when they're going to be getting it by midday on a Friday. The contracts are clear and reliable. They know what's going to be happening and having conversations with them about that as well. And I think that's why we've really aimed to get the fundamentals right, because the culture and the performance really then affects the customer experience, which affects the bottom line as well. Our ethos is to bring in the best possible people, giving them the best possible opportunities in the best possible workplaces to achieve the best results. That is something that we're super adamant on and really dictates our culture. We're a people-driven culture, and we really want to start with getting the basics right. Okay. As I said, first strategy and the people strategy as well. Are our places physically safe? What is the mental well-being like as well? I think Health and safety for years, I have always found in my time and my career through health and safety in people, um, the two have always been almost separate. The mental well-being of people and the physical well-being of people are separate. That isn't the case anymore. They need to be brought together. Um, they're the same thing. Think these are things that affect people massively. Dignity and fairness, how we treat people and treating people fairly, something we'll get onto later on when we talk about lead the human way. But we need to listen to people. We need to give people opportunity. We need to explain things and decisions and so on as why those happen. And last but not least, not to get into the very basics of things, but when we look at the historic Maslow's hierarchy of needs, pay when it comes to business is right there at the bottom. Safety, pay. We need to make sure that that's right and that it's consistent and people know when they're getting it. We hear horror stories in the UK here of people not sharing pay, people not being paid for weeks on end when they should be weekly or months on end. And why would somebody want to come to work when that's happening? It just doesn't make sense to me. It's the very basic thing of not just business, but how you treat a human. Okay. The basics aren't boring. The foundations of thriving people and businesses, as I said, that's what we need to thrive. If we're not getting these right, how can we expect our people to thrive? How can we expect ourselves to thrive? And I think one of the questions that I want to give you guys some food for thought on today as you go away with this is there a basic that done properly would improve immediately the trust in your workplace? Something to just go away about and have a food for thought over the weekend. This is the beauty of doing this on a Friday, that we're able to think about it as we're thinking about our working week at the end of the day on a Friday or over the weekend. But it's just something that I really wanted to share with you guys today about a question of a food for thought. What's the one basic that we could do that would immediately improve trust in our workplace? I'll tell you mine straight away to share from a hospitality point of view. Um, we the building that one of our most important sites, the Prince Arthur is in, dates back to 1861, and it's a very old building. It's listed, and things go wrong in there daily. And we're in the process of trying to do some quite large, extensive work surrounding the safety in one of the kitchens. And that's on my to-do list when we finish today to make sure that we follow up on the last visit that we had with our health and safety executives to make sure the work that we've done has been effective and is working. So I'll be joining you guys in thinking about all these questions as well about what I need to be doing to immediately improve the trust in our workplaces. Okay. So getting the basics right. We can't move on to anything else until we've got this right here. Okay. But with that in mind, let's move on to the next idea here. Build cultures that protect and perform. So I always think that high-performing organizations don't trade safety for results. Safety and well-being drive results. Okay. It's got to be part of the culture, and it's why I keep talking about it. A real life example for you here, which I don't really like to speak about a lot, but I think it's just so important to explain why safety and well-being in the workplace and how we treat people can have a direct impact on culture and why it needs to be cultural. So I joined Hugo Boss Northern Europe in October of no, sorry, in June of 2016. I remember it so distinctly because I was going to work for a German company the day that Germany won the World Cup in Brazil. And the big expectation was crystal clear when I joined. Consistency and safety standards, it just wasn't a nice to have. It was an absolute non-negotiable. Stores simply couldn't perform if people didn't feel safe in their roles and in their workplaces. As I joined the organization in the May of 2016 or June 2016, unfortunately, in the previous summer in 2015, Hugo Boss UK, and it's quite public, faced a tragedy that really dictated a lot of what I did going forward in regards to safety and culture. Very young child, was only 4 years old. Unfortunately, passed away and was killed in a store in the UK. The basics of it was there was a mirror that wasn't attached to the wall properly. He pulled a mirror onto himself and unfortunately crushed himself. It was a preventable system failure. As I said, the mirror wasn't fixed to the wall, health and safety checks hadn't been carried out properly, and instructions weren't followed. And it had a direct impact on everyone involved in that and really changed the culture of the organization. The organization was fined £1.2 million for its health and safety breaches. The family lost their child. There was full store teams and everybody involved who had to go through the process as well of the investigation into what happened, the court cases, which completely affected and changed their lives. But it really, really shook the culture. And I was brought in with health and safety as part of my responsibility. And health and safety and well-being went from just being a talking point and a tick box exercise to become a principle woven into every single decision, every process, and every leadership conversation that we had going forward. And this is what I'm talking about. We shouldn't wait for terrible tragedies to happen and things to happen in the workplace to affect what we do. We should be doing them as part of our basics and building on top of that. Too often, it's a crisis that sparks change, but let's not wait for that as people who have an effect on people's lives. And this has driven me to develop a methodology that I like to call PEAK, where I look at organizations based on these four things. It's your people, it's your experience, it's accountability, and it's knowledge. So I see this as a modern way of workplace accreditation and developing audit frameworks to be able to make sure that businesses are doing the fundamentals of everything that they should be doing, not going above and beyond. It's what they need to do on a day-to-day basis of everything that they do. It's based around 32 questions on all different sectors. As we say, from the people side of it, how we hire, how we support them, the pay, the protection, the compliance, the contracts, the fairness, the experiences, so the safety, the inclusion, the recognition, the well-being of those organizations, what we can do there, so how people are experiencing their workplace, accountability, leaders who are consistent and dependable. So it's about, is it psychological safe? Is it work safe? Do the policies translate into action, or are they just buzzwords that people have and do? Are they actionable and are they part of that culture? And last but not least, the knowledge. How well leaders and teams are equipped with the tools, the data for a safe and smart working environment, and is compliance and are all these things part of every single day culture? Okay, so I think this is how you can really measure a workplace. It's a product that I have and do, and I'll be sharing more details on as time goes by. But it's a really clear way of being able to audit businesses, understand that people are doing the foundations that we spoke about earlier on, and then be going forward. Because for me, culture isn't about how things look when everything's calm. It's about what happens under pressure. And if these things are in place, that really, really helps. And for me, you can't scale chaos. You can't sustain performance without safety and getting those basics right. Okay. So for me, the next point of interest and the next point of the conversation that I'd just like everyone to think about in their own time over the weekend and so on, complete the sentence. In my workplace, safety contributes to performance when. Okay. So I'd like you guys to take that away and have a think about safety. And remember, when I talk about safety, I'm not just talking about health and safety and tick box exercises and this, and this. I'm talking about creating safe workplaces for mental health. Is it safe for people to be able to speak up? Is it safe that people know they're getting those fundamentals and basics in place? In my workplace, safety contributes to performance when. Okay. So have a think about that. Next point is a big one, and I think it's something that is very, very simple, but goes a long way and sometimes isn't done by businesses, be it time or just not wanting to hear. Okay. I think if people aren't speaking up, your business isn't growing, it's just surviving. And as I said earlier on, it's time for us to move away from surviving. It's time for us to thrive. For the last 5 years, we've been surviving. How are we going to thrive and grow going forward? That's the big question. We need to listen to our people. Voice is at the start of everything. Trust, innovation, safety, loyalty. But it's not just enough give people a survey, a suggestion box. You have to learn to listen. It's the starting point. If creating loyalty, if people see that we're listening and we're acting on it, that's how you create trust and loyalty. And as I said earlier on, trust is the foundation of growth. Listening isn't through surveys alone. It's about everyday conversations and culture signals. Listening means taking what your people have to say seriously, whether it's through formal data or everyday conversations. It means hearing business, absence rates, turnover rates. So, what's your labor turnover like? Grievances, how are people feeling? What are the complaints they have? Even just in meetings, everyday body language, we see it as HR and people professionals. Culture's always talking to us. The real question is about how we're listening. And I think my work that I do with Great Place to Work, and why I'm so proud of it, they're the real world leaders in employee engagement and trust. Every year globally, they listen to over 20 million employees across 100 countries worldwide. And the findings are the same across every single nation. When people feel truly heard, organizations don't just perform better, they outperform their competitors. And the data proves it. Companies recognized on the world's best workplaces list outperform the Russell 3000 by nearly 3 in stock returns. So when you're looking at the Russell 3000 stock exchange, times 3 in stock returns. And when we talk about employees and what we can do on a day-to-day basis, let's not just forget the top lines. On a day-to-day, employees in high trust workplaces are 4.5 times more likely to stay longer term and 5.5 times more likely to say their workplace is great. That's huge. And I think a Great Place to Work, the UK, we practice what we preach as well. We follow our own methodology. We listen. We do our trust indexes on ourselves, and that forms our people strategy. As I said earlier on, you've got to get the basics right and then listen to people to help form the people strategy for businesses. It's what we need to do to be able to take action and move forward. As I said, there's these things here that help, but we share results and turn feedback into leadership priorities. We don't run surveys to feel good. We run them to find out the truth and then act on it. Okay. So make the voice the engine of progress. Listen to what your people have got to say, hear them out, and help that form what you've got to do to improve your business, make it a better workplace, make it a great workplace, and then affect everything else that's going on in your organization. Okay. That's the question I think we should all ask ourselves. Do your people feel safe speaking up today? So if there was an issue, would the people in your organization feel safe to speak up? Who would they speak to? How would it be voiced? How would you listen to it? Again, how would you listen and how would you take action? That would be one of my big things. A big learning for me here personally today, and what I'll be doing, again with my company, All the Best, the hospitality business, we had 0% labor turnover for a year, which is completely unheard of in the UK hospitality industry. Over the last 2 months, we've seen an exodus, people leaving for bigger opportunities. As a small independent business, it's hard to progress people. They've been with us for 2 to 3 years now, feel they've learned what they need to, and then they're moving on. For me, I need to listen to why they're moving on. Is there anything that we've done wrong? Is there anything that I could improve on? Or is it just that people are looking for a time for change? It could just be that. but I need to listen to it and I need to take action because if there are things that I can change, you better be sure that I am changing that because that business is one of my prides and joys. I want it to carry on being award winning and successful. So I'm going to be listening and I'm going to be taking action. Okay. That then leads us to listening, to lead in the human way. So, what do I mean by this? As I said earlier on, the one thing that unites us as a planet, as a globe, as a workforce across every nation possible, we're all human beings. And we're on the cusp of this AI revolution. We're not just on the cusp of it, we're in it. And we need to react to it. But the one thing AI will never be able to do is take away compassion, how we treat people, and what we're doing going forward. Okay. So for me, I always see that leading and health and safety and people practices, they're not just forms, they're a form of leadership. And we need to be leading the human way. Culture belongs to everyone. Um, Leaders at every level, managers, the teams. It's not just a HR thing. We're the barometer. So we dictate and understand what's going on. We measure it, but leaders at all levels set it. And I'm not just talking about leaders in the boardroom. I'm talking about leaders within our organization. We're all leaders from the entry level roles to the boardrooms. We all lead in everything that we do, and we need to set that. The culture depends on all of us. I think I've seen it go wrong in places, culture, where this isn't a focus. As I mentioned, I've worked in some workplaces that famously had quite large collapses and focused on progression and growth and put well-being was spoken about, but it wasn't truly prioritized. Leaders encouraging focus on growth and performance above everything. And what's the result? Massive burnout for people, mistrust, high attrition rates, and ultimately a collapse, a scale back, a reset, because people weren't leading the human way. And I think that experience really shaped my thinking on well-being and safety and how it's done. And for me, sparked this methodology that I'll talk about now, which I called the sound methodology. It's about being sound. And you may tell from my accent, not English British accent. I'm from a region in the northwest of England, between Liverpool and Manchester. For any Manchester United fans out there, good to see you. But sound is a tone or a term that basically describes somebody being good and being nice and being open. And that person is sound is a term of endearment. Oh, you know what? That person's a sound person. I've taken that and created this about how we can be sound leaders when we're having conversations with people. And it's about sparking curiosity, be open to conversation. As a leader, you set the tone in any conversation. If you're looking down or feeling down, the person you're speaking to is going to feel down. So you spark how that conversation is going to go. Make sure you're setting the tone right. Ask the questions. What's working? What's not? Spark the conversation. Lead the conversation. Be open to dialogue. I think that's a crucial thing for me. And you create space for the dialogue and for honesty. That's what we're talking about, learning to listen. Be open to what people have got to say. Don't get your back up, as we'd say here. Don't be defensive. Be thankful for the feedback. Be open to the conversation. Be understanding of well of people. We're a true global workforce everywhere that we go, a true global workplace. People have different experiences, people that have different backgrounds, different educations, come from different cultures. Be understanding, show empathy over assumption. That's something that I've really tried to do as I've progressed in my career. Show empathy over assumption. Nurture, be nurturing, care about the growth and well-being of people. It leads to that well-being and safety. It must be led from the top. Nurture it, care about the growth and well-being. Be dependable is a crucial one. I think that's a core thing in how we treat people. Be dependable, follow up on things, don't drop things, have conversations, be there for people. But being dependable for me is also about knowing when to let go and letting someone do this on their own. you then restart the sound cycle. So once somebody is ready to progress and move on, start that spark again. Have the conversation. Ask what was working since last time, what's not. How do we go again? It's a continuous cycle of being sound. Because the truth is, the most advanced safety strategies is just people looking out for people. We're all humans. When we strip it all back, just be sound to each other. It'll make the biggest difference. So, the question on this one that I'd like to ask you all is, which sound behavior, if done consistently in your workplace or university or wherever you are or personal life, would have the biggest impact on your culture? How would it help? Next one, crucial one, and why I think we're all here today is about culture being the multiplier. Everything that we do on a day-to-day basis and everything that we've spoken about today is about culture, right? And about growth. That's the multiplier. We need to get our cultures right in all of our organizations and our lives to multiply. If we don't have the basics that we've spoken about, we're not going to get to this point. If we don't learn to listen, we're not going to be able to grow. If we don't create those cultures that protect and perform, people aren't going to feel safe. If we if we're not sound, that isn't going to help either. So culture is the multiplier, and I think that's the key message of what we're talking about today. It's the key to growth, culture. Basics are the foundation. Leadership is the direction. Culture is the multiplier. I cannot emphasize that enough. Okay. A great place to work, we see it every year, we see it every day. When organizations act on culture and insights consistently, they outperform those around us. And that's not just financial. I mean, in terms of labor turnover, the culture in that organization, how happy people are. When we look at all the best, the hospitality group, when our people feel safe and proud of what they do, guests feel it too. And that's what this is all about. The culture of pride and safety spills directly into experience and commercial results. This is what we all lead about. That's why we, as people leaders and directors, are so important to everything that goes on in an organization because we set this on the barometer of culture, as I said, but we help explain one. So you can see these drawings next. I think a safe workplace is the minimum. A thriving one is the goal. And how do we multiply culture? Well, four cultural habits that can multiply cultures. So, as leaders, we need to teach the tale. So, what's the story? What are we trying to do? What are our purposes? And how are we explaining them? They've got to be clear to those around us. People come to work and they don't know why they're there or who they're working for. That doesn't matter. People aren't going to be bothered about the business and organization. It's about teaching people why they're working at that certain place, why it's so important, what is the story, and why they're there. Practice what we preach. Again, a crucial one. It's about understanding who we are, so learning about teaching the tale, and then practicing what we preach. So as leaders, we need to be ones modeling the values, especially when we're under pressure. I'm very proud to say that I work with several businesses that put culture and values at the forefront of what they do. They're not just things that are on a coffee cup or posted on the wall. Those values dictate day-to-day decisions. So for example, one of our values at All the Best is about profitability. So why are we doing it? So profit is a big thing. So when we talk about profit, we don't just talk about financial, we talk about the profit of our people. So are they going to be happier? That value is at the core of our decision-making process. So if we're looking to partner with somebody or we're looking to hire somebody, we will ask ourselves about the profit. Not just from a financial point of view, but from the people happiness point of view as well. Is that person going to fit into the team? What are they going to get from working here? What can they offer us? Can we offer them? It's a big part of that. And again, it's practicing what we preach. I always think as HR, right? We're the last resort if we've got to exit someone. Um, we treat people the same way as they're exiting a business as when they come into that business. It's so important that, and that's something that I really preach, and something I really try to practice. Inspiring the insiders. I honestly think that in any organization, this is the most important part of any organization. If you look at the structure of a business, be it an SME or a multinational with 100,000 employees worldwide, you'll have the C-suite, you'll have heads of and managers, you'll have people who are just doing the roles and so on, and entry level roles. That middle tier of management aren't in the C-suite, so might not be privy to all the information that's coming from the C-suite, but they're the ones that are working with everybody across the organization. They've got the most line reports. They're the ones that dictate people's schedule, pay increases. If someone's off sick, they're the ones processing it. They're having those day-to-day interactions. So it's so crucial to get that level of middle management on board with learning about the tail, practicing what we preach to them, because they dictate that to everyone on an everyday basis. It's fine as leaders for us to come up with this great stories and narratives about our organizations and our businesses and what we do, and to preach to our direct line reports. But if those insiders of middle management aren't on board with us, or don't care, or are feeling disgruntled, or not connected to the organization, they're not going to project that to anyone across the board. So that's why it's so important to get their buy-in. Something, for example, we've done at Great Place to Work to do this is we've created our future leadership team. So it's for people in middle managers who have line reports, who we see one day as jumping up to the heads of departments, the C-suites, and so on. They get a full day of training every single month with myself, the chief people advisor, the managing director, the chief operations officer, where we will spend all morning talking to them about the business, what's going on, financial results, what each departments are doing, how we're talking, what's happening there. And then in the afternoon, we do a full training session. It may be about doing difficult conversations. Next week, we've got a session about managing remote teams and how we can do it, and the effects of how lonely it is to work at home and how we can motivate people and so on whilst working remote. We've seen that as a huge step in our organization to get that point across of, okay, this is our mission, these are our values, these are our OKRs. How do we project that down throughout the organization? And we've seen that that really helps. We haven't had a leaver at Great Place to Work UK in 18 months, a voluntary leaver, which is a huge achievement. And it's because we really do practice what we preach. And we try to inspire those insiders as well. And as I've said, last but not least, we learn to listen. Make it a daily habit, not an annual event. We shouldn't be waiting to have PDP conversations with people, or we shouldn't be waiting to have our surveys and listening that way. Open dialogue is crucial to a business improving, and it's how we as leaders take that feedback and act on it. Even if it's something we can't do, act, respond, have a conversation as to why, explain. It's so important to people, but it's crucial that we learn to listen. And I always think you can be a lousy listener if you drop things, if you try to interject and dictate a conversation, if you drop what that person's saying. It really affects people on a day-to-day basis. So we need to learn to listen. Okay. And again, culture is what multiplies performance, safety, and trust. It's built day to day in how people behave, not just posters on the wall or on a coffee cup or on a company website. That's culture. It's how we do things on a day-to-day basis. Okay. What I'd like you to think about going forward, which of these 4 habits, if focused on today, would shift your culture the most in your workforce? If you were to look at your organization from the top down, if we were to look at these 4 things, what would improve it? How would we improve it? What could you do? Okay. When we talk about learning to listen and inspire the insiders, something else that I've seen across multiple organizations that has worked, something called a how are you conversation. And this is basically separate to the PDP, separate to the trust index that's done every year. biannual meeting with every single member of staff where you ask the simple question, how are you? How are you getting on outside of work? Is there anything in work that's affecting your personal life? Is there anything that we could do to help? Prime example of this I've seen quite recently. Somebody had had an issue where they'd had to move back home to their parents. They'd lived in a flat somebody else and had had an eviction where they were living with their partner and parents and so on. And we offered to get them a co-working space near where they live, not in London. And that really helped their quality of life. It was a very minimal cost for us, but really helped that person going forward. So that's listening, that's taking action, that's helping somebody do the slightest thing that really changed that person's working experience and their personal life as well. If we don't listen, we don't act, people aren't going to be happy. Okay? As I said, built daily, it's how we behave, not on posters on the wall. The big ideas, guys, get the basics right. We build cultures that protect and perform. We make voice the engine of our progress. We lead the human way. And culture is the multiplier. Okay?
Thank you so much, Jonathan, our speaker, for your time and sharing your knowledge, experience with our members. They are so happy, as you can see. I hope you're able to go through the chat box and see the